Thursday, March 13th. Welcome back to Damon Bruce Plus. That is Dieter Kurtenbach of the Merc. You can also check him out in the Dieter and Hutch pod. And I have enjoyed talking sports with Dieter for years here. I used to love him having as a guest as on the radio. Then I would listen to him on the radio, and I've been following him for a really long time. Dieter, we are long overdue, man. How are you?
I'm doing great, Damon. Thanks for finally having me. I've been chasing you down. My lawyers have been seeking after you for years, and finally we've been able to do this, and the check is in the mail.
Thank you very much. Lawyers, guns, and money settle everything, and I'm glad that we were able to finally contractually agree to the right time to do this. It's amazing what little kids do to a broadcasting schedule, and that's where we will leave it. Let's hop right into the news du jour, Dieter. Mac Jones and Kyle Shanahan, I don't want to say reunited at last, but we all know the common background, how he was almost the pick. It wasn't. It was Trey Lance. Mac Jones has since gone from the decent rookie debut to career sort of lost in the woods. What do you think of this reclamation project for Kyle? And is it the right antidote for what is ailing the 49ers quarterback room in terms of a viable backup should something happen to Brock, assuming we're still living in Brock's world, which we'll get to a little bit later?
Well, it is a pretty lame trope that this sitcom now in year 8 is finally going to consummate the will they or won't they between Mac Jones and Kyle Shanahan. That tells you that the whole thing is dying and that NBC is about to cancel this bad boy. To answer the actual question, it doesn't do much for me. Like, he's a good backup quarterback, but he's a true backup quarterback. You're not getting that upside of, well, if Purdy goes down, the season can be salvaged because Mac Jones is there. He might be better because Kyle Shanahan's now his coach. Certainly he wasn't getting much in Jacksonville last year. Their offensive line was a mess. Doug Peterson had, I guess, both feet out the door and his body was still in it. He was contorting to make that happen. I mean, Trent Baalke was the GM of that team last year. You can't take them seriously. And the Patriots were just on a slow decline to nowhere. So maybe McCorkle has been done in by circumstance. That's how it works in the NFL. And maybe he can get a Sam Darnold-like bump being with Kyle Shanahan. But I don't get the impression that he's a significant upgrade over either of the backups they had last year. And neither of the backups they had last year were guys who could win you any games. He might be able to win you 1 out of 4, but that doesn't mean anything. It might actually mean something if they're going for a high draft pick at the end of the season. But until then, it is merely a minor update or a minor upgrade at a position where I'm not sure I'd be putting money towards an upgrade. You need a safety, you need a linebacker, you need like an entire defensive line, you need an X receiver, you need a backup running back, you need probably a fullback or a tight end. Who the hell knows what's going on there? You need a left guard, but they got McCorkle, so Kyle got his guy.
As we're walking the quarterback path, and we kind of know what put us on this particular path, if a few weeks ago you would have whispered in my ear, the 49ers will have a deal done with Mac Jones before they do Brock Purdy, I would have said, no, what are you smoking? There's no way. Look, we'll get to Purdy in a second, but is it a detriment to the 49ers, or is it almost a demerit to the 49ers that Kyle Shanahan is Jeff Spicoli when it comes to quarterbacks? He looks at him and goes, I can fix it. Does that allow them to go in directions that maybe teams that didn't have that adventurous a quarterback whisperer type of head coach wouldn't have to go through?
I think if you are a competent NFL head coach, which means in all likelihood, you're an offensive-minded head coach that's calling plays in the modern era. If you don't have that sort of Spicoli belief that you can fix any quarterback, I don't really know what it is you're doing out here. Let's use the example of, I think, the guy who maybe has taken the mantle, even though he's never really done anything in the playoffs, as perhaps the preeminent mind in the Shanahan-Kubiak tree, which is Kevin O'Connell. Think about what he did last season. He's like, I'll bring in Daniel Jones and I will fix him. Just in case, I'll take Sam Darnold, and then if we need him, I can fix him. And now this year he's going, J.J. McCarthy got injured last year, and everyone's wondering if we should just keep Darnold. No, I can do this. You have to have some level of self-belief that you can make the quarterback what you want the quarterback to be. It might be delusional belief, but you have to have that belief. Otherwise, again, what are we doing here? In terms of, Kyle and Mac, again, we're leaning into the rom-com energy of it all. I can fix him. It's like, you're not going to Pretty Woman Mac Jones here. And I have no problem, baseline, again, with Mac Jones being the backup quarterback. That's what he should be. Kyle likes him. I don't see any more qualifications that are necessary. Backup quarterback that Kyle likes. It will work out for Mac Jones. It will work out for the 49ers as long as we have expectations with a serious dose of reality. It will work out for Kyle because he doesn't have to think about this ever again. He doesn't have to worry about, am I going to play Josh Dobbs or Brandon Allen? How about neither? How about we don't even bother with either of those guys and we forfeit the game so we don't have to go to Green Bay? But in terms of where it fits with Brock, I don't think it means anything, because if anyone legitimately thinks that Mac Jones, and this includes Kyle, by the way, I don't think this is the case with Kyle. I'm guessing on this, but if Kyle believes, or if anyone believes that Mac Jones can go and do what Brock Purdy does, that, now Kyle's got his Brock Purdy replacement, we're not watching the same sport. We can point out all the negatives about Brock Purdy. That's fine. It's not to say he's a flawless football player, but the idea that Mac Jones and Brock Purdy are on the same level, they play the same position, but they are not on the same level.
Right.
Established over the last 4 years.
Right. A Prius and a Lamborghini are both cars. However, big difference. And look,
you should see my 2007 Honda CRV. It technically will get me there.
By the way, and I'm not saying Brock is a Lamborghini here. You know what I mean? But there's a difference. And yeah, you're right. I'm in the media world too. You want to be impressed by the Kia Sorento sitting in the driveway?
Listen, we bought the Kurtenbach family did a very dumb thing, which is we bought a very nice car, and because of that, we have one nice car and one beater car, which might actually be the right way to handle it when you live around the San Francisco area. Which car do we take to the city, and which car do we take to the mall?
I know which car the kids go in. That's for sure.
That's right. That's right.
In the hoopty. By the way, since this is the Spicoli portion of the show, it feels like the right time to tell everyone to go get lunch at Ike's today. I don't know where you are. Hopefully you're around an Ike's. Go to an Ike's. If you're at an office right now, if you're in charge of ordering Ike's or lunch for your office, check out Ike's Catering. Check out Ike's Rewards app. Start earning your way towards free sandwiches. And if you don't live in an Ike's area, maybe it's time for you to move or get a car that can bring you to an Ike's as quickly as possible. And if you're in San Francisco, the best place to grab a Guinness while you are watching a Warrior game, watching the upcoming NFL draft, go to Dubliner West Portal. Tell my buddies Kenny and John that I said hello. Great guys, great bar, great Guinness pull, Dubliner West Portal. Thanks to them. Thanks to our sponsors. Thanks to Dieter Kurtenbach for coming on by today. And what is this? So you got to put this moment in time into a little bit of a capsule. Is this a reset, a retooling, or would you use the real R word, the rebuild?
I'll use a C word. Cowboying. They're cowboying right now. This is exactly what the Dallas Cowboys did last year. It's exactly what they did this year. They'll call it a quiet offseason. They'll say that they're reestablishing the roster. We're purging some of the bad contracts and we're bringing in young, fresh blood. What they're doing is they're doubling down on their problem. And the Cowboys did this, and you've seen what they've done the last couple of years. Oh, well, if Dak gets injured, we don't stand a chance. And the roster has just degraded and degraded and degraded. And the 49ers, I guess, are getting out ahead of it because they were in a better spot than the Cowboys ever were. But this is the team's issue the last couple of years. And this includes the year that they went to the Super Bowl, a year that they went to the NFC Championship game, has been that they have had a stars and scrubs roster and that they had no middle class on that roster. There was nobody who was a viable backup that could slide in at most positions. And so you were really hoping on health and superstar production. And this past year, they got neither from a good deal of players, which you could have foreseen, but they tried to run it back. They took the risk. They paid the price. And now they have to do 2 off seasons in one to get back to where they should be. And instead, they're doing none. They're just not doing an off season. So yes, guys like Dre Greenlaw and Talanoa Hufanga and Javon Hargrave and Leonard Floyd, in a vacuum, all of the decisions to let those guys go make perfect sense. But we're not operating in a vacuum. We're building a damn football team. And they haven't replaced any of them. You have to replace the players that you get rid of. And the idea that, we have 11 picks in the draft. Well, you have 3 of them after pick 230. What the hell's that going to get you? Sure as hell not a starter. You're going to get a starter in the 5th round Guaranteed. You need one.
Yeah,
this is not a rebuild.
Right.
This is
you might, but you might not. And
like I think the optimism over the draft is totally unfounded. They had a good draft last year. They maybe got 5 players out of that draft. And by the way, we'll find out because they only got 1 year. We only know what we've seen so far. It's a fairly small sample size when we're talking about NFL careers. That was their best draft by far in the Kyle Shanahan, John Lynch era. This is a team that was getting 1, maybe 2 good players a draft in perpetuity, which is why they didn't have a middle class. People talk about, the Chiefs or the Steelers, like good teams, consistently good teams, they can let their high-priced free agents go when they get priced out of what teams want to actually value. The Chiefs can let L'Jarius Sneed go because they have this Watson kid. L'Jarius Sneed was a beneficiary of it. They had Charvarius Ward. They're like, now we got L'Jarius Sneed. We'll let him go in there. They can do stuff like that because they draft and develop consistently well every year. They always get 4 or 5 players a draft. The 49ers have just now, for the first time since the world ended, gotten 4 or 5 players in a draft. That does not constitute an entire middle class. And by the way, those guys are all starters now. They're all starters, save for Isaac Guerrero. So there's no middle. They're doubling down on the bottom, and they got rid of some of the guys at the top. How is this roster going to look better next year? They're going to be starting D. Winters. They're going, I guess they're going back to Jair Brown at safety. They're going to pick up off the scrap heap, or maybe a draft pick, legitimately a corner. I don't know how they can draft all the defensive tackles and defensive ends they need. They don't have enough picks. And I like Ben Barch, but you can't sell me on Ben Barch as your starting left guard. You got to bring in at least some competition there. And it can't be Spencer Burford, who they had as a persona non grata last year. And, Brandon Ayuk might be your X receiver. You just traded your Z. You're going to give that to Pearsall. But Brandon Ayuk might not show up until Thanksgiving if he shows up at all. That knee is barbecue chicken. So it's great that you have George Kittle and Fred Warner and Malik Mustafa. And it's great that you have some good players. Trent Williams, obviously, Christian McCaffrey, healthy. That's all fun and good. But you need to have not just an all-22. You need to go 44 deep, and they go like 12 deep. This is a last-place roster right now. It might have the worst defensive line in football. And that has Nick Bosa on it.
Right. And
like, what are we doing
in the room today? But there is more coming. I mean, free agency certainly not over. The draft hasn't happened. But no, there's a lot of wishful thinking being attached to how quickly this is rebuilt. Yet somehow, I really look at the team almost like they're doing what is the not fun work, the adult stuff of getting the books right, and they are a year away from having more cash to splash around. I also think that there is a direct correlation between foolish teams and big money spends on day one of free agency.
I get that.
But they right now, they have pretty much stripped this thing down to the point where people are confusing it with a rebuild and leaning in and asking the question, well, then why not just go all in on that and try to trade Christian McCaffrey or whatever bare bones deal you could get for Brandon Ayuk's contract that apparently is one of the, the catalysts of why Jed York is on a let's count our money warpath.
Yeah, well, that's always worked out. Nothing really precedes victory in the NFL like being cheap. And what it seems to me is that the 49ers are trying to present fiscal prudence as an excuse for being cheap. I think we do need to go back. You'll have a better understanding of this than me, so correct me if I'm wrong. But like they go to the Super Bowl in 2012, they have Colin Kaepernick as their quarterback. That then provides them some pretty good financial flexibility moving forward. They obviously have players that they want to keep around, great players that took them to the Super Bowl, and they re-sign a lot of them. It wasn't as if it was this exodus. They didn't have the purge like they did this year. Again, all of those moves that they made in the purge, justifiable in and of themselves, but you have to have someone to do the job after them, and they don't. But back in 2012, Jed is really now in the full throes of his ownership. He's the man now, and they carried over a lot of cap room year over year over year. And the 49ers, as of late, have carried over a lot of cap room year over year. But the expectation was, that's Purdy money. They're doing that so that they can pay Brock easily. And now I think they're just doing it because they don't want to spend it, that they're going full Giants and just saying, this money could be better spent on, I don't know, a Scottish soccer team, and not even a good one.
Well, have you seen the rumor, not to jump tracks so early here in this discussion, but have you seen the rumor that the Tampa Bay Rays, who I don't know if they further confirmed rumors of exodus from the
their owner said that they're not going to go forth with the ballpark plan that they had in St. Pete. That would be the specifics.
Also, Rob Manfred might be looking to muscle out their ownership, which, again, why did you do that with John
super
Fisher?
cool.
That's another
way to
story.
Get around to that. Who knew they had that option all along?
I heard that the DeBartolo family, which instantly starts ringing that York's bell, might be one of the invited to come and maybe bid on the Tampa Bay. I'm wondering if the Yorks aren't trying to get cash solvent here because they're thinking about not chasing down another soccer team, but that they could be in position to buy the Tampa Bay Devil Rays or just Rays at this point.
Well, they would never be the Devil Rays in that circumstance ever again. That is a fair hypothesis. It's impossible for me to say that couldn't be the case. And I'll say this. The Niners should have absolutely no fiscal insolvency whatsoever. The NFL cuts a check. I mean, first off, it's the we're not talking about the Browns or the Bengals or the Jaguars. We're talking about the San Francisco 49ers. And I know that comes across as
$9 billion.
The Niners. My wife grew up in Scotland. She knew about the San Francisco 49ers. So that is football. That is the West Coast's biggest football brand. They make money hand over fist. And even in the year that they spent the absolute most they've ever spent on their roster, $350 million in cash, roughly, the NFL cut them a check for $366 last time I checked. That is a check that the NFL cuts for their media rights deals and like big time sponsorships for the league. 366 goes in. You had to spend 350 on players. I understand there's a lot more that goes into running an NFL team. And frankly, the only way that you could be losing money as an NFL team right now is if you have incompetence in the president's office and all the other places that NFL teams are run. I can speak from, my experience. Like, I don't believe that's the case at all. So it's really just about, I think, control when it comes to Jed right now. He took his eye off the prize. He ceded control to start. He goes, okay, I'm clearly the problem. Credit to him for recognizing it after 3 years of everyone telling him that and then firing coach after coach after coach. I'm sort of the problem. He goes Hail Mary, and he goes and hires Kyle Shanahan, who has no head coaching experience. He gives him a 6-year deal. He gives him full football control. He gives him the Belichick. Says, you can pick your GM. Goes all in on Kyle Shanahan. Works out gangbusters. But part of that agreement is, hey, why don't you kind of step to the side? You just run the team, handle the business side of things, do whatever politics you want to do your soccer team buying, all that. Like, we're just going to make money and win games. And it paid off. And over the last couple of years, they have tried in the effort to win a Super Bowl, spent probably more money than they should have. Some of those deals have not worked out. That is obvious. And I think Parag, who handled a lot of the day-to-day when it came to those contracts and turned in some really team-friendly deals for the 49ers, I think he had his eye off the prize because he was too busy dealing with leads and too busy buying Rangers and too busy doing all these other things. And John and Kyle, and I think as of late, more John than Kyle, because Kyle took his hands off the reins a little bit too, they just went hog wild. And at some point, the teenagers spent too much. Daddy got the credit card bill and said, hey, what are we doing here? Except Daddy can afford it all. So I don't quite get the idea of what fiscal prudence does other than makes Jed feel like he's actually running his own team. And that, to steal a line I used earlier, is not exactly a precursor to success.
So in the world of fiscal responsibility, I guess that just walks us right back to what's about to happen with Brock Purdy. And obviously, just for our own mental health, I want this deal done soon. But I also absolutely in my heart believe that a deal struck today is cheaper than a deal struck on Monday of next week. Like, it's time to get this done. All the money that you needed to save and allocate and earmark for this, you just done did it. So now turn around and get this done. Do you think we're looking at the end of this nightmare by the end of next week? Or is there a world where this actually gets dragged to a point of, you've got to be fucking kidding me, how is this not done yet?
I don't think it's going to take long for everyone to get to the "are you fucking kidding me" portion. I think there are some people that are already there.
Kind of already there.
I mean, I try to live by the axiom to never prolong the inevitable. And the longer this goes, I suppose the only way I can view it is that it's not inevitable and that the Niners are going to play hardball to such a point that they drag this thing along. But your point was exactly spot on. The Niners are finding out firsthand that they don't have a good read on what the marketplace is, right? They want to go get Joey Bosa. They're going to pay him $10 million. They think that's a fair deal, if maybe a bit of an overpay. And Buffalo comes in and goes, yeah, 12-6. And the 49ers clutch their pearls and go, oh, I can't. We couldn't possibly go to 12-6. Today's price is not what yesterday's price was. Inflation is a mean son bitch. And everybody got $24 million free dollars this season to go and do whatever they wanted. And a bunch of players turned into Timothy Mozgov in the summer of 2016 in NBA free agency, and Luol Deng and Chandler Parsons and Ian Mahimi. And there's only one Kevin Durant, and he wasn't even available this year. So everybody is just spending. The market keeps going up and up and up, and the 49ers are holding on to 2022 prices and wondering why all these players cost so much. Oh, we couldn't possibly touch that. What happens when CJ Stroud signs his extension? If the Niners want to drag this thing out, they are allowing a team, be it the Texans or somebody else, to make a $70 million quarterback.
Jaden Daniels. Daniels is going to be the first.
You want to play the franchise tag? And, yeah. I mean, it's going to be today. The salary cap's going to. The NFL is a very well-run company. The salary cap went up $24 million because the NFL is well-run. It will continue to be well-run. It will only double down on its dominance year after year after year in the sports landscape. It is the one true media entity in the modern world. And that means that the salary cap's going to keep going up and up and up, which means that Brock Purdy, while technically his contract won't be tied to the salary cap like it is in the NBA, it kind of is for quarterbacks. And what would be 40 last year, which is probably the number they want, is now 45 or 50. And that 45 or 50 will be 55 or 60, and then 55. And then someone's going to come in and do something stupid, and they're going to give somebody 70, because they're desperate. And I think that the most interesting thing that happened so far in free agency is Justin Fields, who you and I both know, terrible quarterback for the Bears. They have to ship him off, even though they give up 2 first-round picks. Like, we can't do this anymore. Can't do it. They move him. He goes to the Steelers. They're paying him nothing. They give him a shot to win the job. In fact, he gets the job by default because Russ pulls something in camp. He starts. Everyone likes him. He seems like a nice enough guy. I'm not trying to impugn his character. He's just a shitty quarterback. He plays. Russ comes in. They go, oh, okay, this is an actual quarterback. And it's Russ Wilson at this point. And everyone's like, oh, this is a revelation. So now Justin Fields is floating around there again. And the New York Jets are like, let's give you $20 million. He keeps failing up. He got a raise off of his recent play, which has been garbage. If Justin Fields, who's worth 2 wins a year, is worth $20 million a year, that means you're paying about $10 million a win in this marketplace. And I know that when we're talking about Mahomes, who restructured, and Allen, who restructured, people say they get 55. No, they got $250 million in cash is what they got. There's a big difference. That's a different tier. When we're talking about quarterbacks where we can actually barter a bit, let's call it $10 million a win. Brock Purdy's a 7-8 win quarterback. You put the great team around him, they can win 12, 13, 14 games. He's a 7-8 win quarterback. They won 6 last year. How many of those 6 were Brock Purdy in and of himself, just scrambling around, doing whatever the hell he could? Because that team sucked for most of the year.
Yeah.
$10 million. $10 million to win. And you're going to barter over the difference between 45 and 50. You're going to be bartering over a hell of a lot more than that if you want to wait a couple of weeks, if you want to wait a couple of months, if you want to wait a couple of years. Never prolong the inevitable. And the 49ers are just robbing themselves by dicking around with this thing.
Like and subscribe, my friends. Dieter Kurtenbach here with us, talking about a whole bunch of what's going on with the Niners. It feels like I should officially, based on the first 24 minutes of our conversation, throw out the question, do you think the Super Bowl window has closed?
It's so weird because like 3 weeks ago, I was legitimately I feel like I might have been the biggest 49ers optimist. Well, I didn't feel like the gap was that big. Everyone's, the Eagles. It's like the Eagles kind of suck for most of the year. Now they turned it on and they got great players. I'm not knocking anything that they did, but I bet against them all the way up until the end. So it shows what I know. Maybe I'm holding on to my priors here, but like Washington, like, is Adam Peters even a good GM? Legitimately, he gave Javon Kinlaw $15 million and traded for Deebo Samuel. I think he just lucked into a great quarterback. That's what I think.
Maybe.
The Packers, I mean, you want to keep betting on Jordan Love, go to town. Go to town. I couldn't. Now, we're Chicago guys, so maybe we're a bit biased on that front. But I think the Vikings are impressive, but they're going to go with a rookie quarterback or Aaron Rodgers. Take your choice. I don't care for either of them. Detroit's going to get worse. Now that Ben Johnson's not there, now they're going to go back to biting kneecaps. I just don't see the NFC as formidable at all. The Rams are just a 10-win team in perpetuity, neither better nor worse. I felt like the Niners had a real opportunity to, they were going to have to make some tough decisions, but they would have been in play for some good players, in free agency, good draft. They'd be right back in the mix of things, a little bit lighter, a little bit, sprier. Probably looking a lot like maybe a slow start, but looking a lot like 2021 when they did go to the NFC Championship game and Deebo was the offensive player of the year and they had some spark to him, especially late in the year. Like I felt like that was very much in play for this team. I just don't feel that way anymore. And I don't think it's an overreaction because they're just not even bringing in moderately decent play. They're just not bringing in replacements. They're just not going to replace Dre Greenlaw. They're going to go with D. Winters, who, if he was any good, would have beaten out Devondre Campbell, I don't know, at any point last year.
Devondre Campbell, looking back at it, it's even harder to understand why that paralyzed them. Like they didn't know what to do in real time until he forced their own hand. Yeah. What a weird thing for John Lynch and that defense to go through. And I don't know if that's a demerit that you got to put on Sorensen. And it's part of the reason why Sorensen didn't stay. And it's why Staley's gone. And that whole side of the ball just didn't make a lick of sense at any point in time last year.
And I totally get why you would say, okay, let's clear the decks on that side. Let's really cut our losses. We're not going to give third contracts to a lot of these guys. Like Talanoa Hufanga has no role in the league. If someone wants to give him money, knock himself out. But that guy's a Sam linebacker. So have him. And Dre Greenlaw, love him to death. You saw the impact that he had, but remember, it was for 3 quarters. Like you can't trust him coming off of that Achilles. You hope the best for him, but they're paying for the old Dre Greenlaw. And I don't know if the old Dre Greenlaw is ever coming back. That's not worth the risk if you're the San Francisco 49ers right now. You need to look at what the Eagles did, which is that they just got younger and faster on the defensive side. But the Eagles also spent some money. The Eagles also bolstered in areas where they couldn't immediately fill. And the beauty of the NFL might actually be a detriment for the 49ers right now. People in the NBA constantly say, like, we should do the free agency after the draft. Or no, it's the other way around. We should do free agency before the draft so then we know what we need in the draft. The NFL, they do free agency before the draft. It leaves the Niners needing so much from the draft. It makes them look like a bad team. You know who the good and the bad teams are going into a season based on what they need out of a draft. The Eagles needed a corner out of last year's draft. Great, first-round pick. First-round pick should be a starter. No problem at all that you went and did that. Everyone's got needs. No one's perfect. But the idea that the 49ers need 4 starters on defense and probably 2 starters on offense going into this draft, like that's what the Patriots and the Jaguars and the Browns need. That's what shitty football teams need. I don't know how we can't classify the 49ers, even with their top-end stars, as not a shitty football team right now. And they just won 6. So what happens when they win 5?
It's funny, though. You said that you were an optimist just a few weeks ago.
I know.
I remain an optimist just based on I really liked Game of Thrones, the House of Dragons. The thing I like most about it is the zip code that it takes place in. I don't really like the show. I like the zip code. I like Westeros.
And
I don't really like
the nudity.
Yeah. Duh. I don't really like the Niners as they stand right now, but I like their zip code. The fact they got to worry about the Rams, that's it. I mean, the Cardinals are good to split with them every year because that's what just happens. They step on their dicks against the Cardinals somehow, some way. But then the Cardinals ruin their own season in their own special Cardinals ways pretty much all the time. The Seahawks are, at least 2 years away from throwing serious we're back in it punches. So they're going through a big reset, I believe. Yeah. And I've never been a believer in Sam Darnold. So good luck with that. Sam Darnold without Justin Jefferson, I think is going to be have fun with that.
Hey man, Jackson Smith and Jigba's pretty sick. The problem is that they can't clone him in time.
Right. Exactly. I like the fact that Salah's back in the room. I like the fact that conceptually, conceivably, they're not going to have a defense that's trying to sabotage their own chances to win. A last place schedule. Yep. There's a lot to like about the Niners' upcoming season, I guess, except for the Niners themselves.
Just kind of the operative part, right? And all you're describing to me is the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I don't want to be the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Like the Tampa, oh, great, you won the NFC South. Maybe you can win a playoff game. So plucky, those plucky Buccaneers. And then the you're the Falcons. I mean, it's like, just because, the division isn't impressive. By the way, the division wasn't impressive this past year. They finished in last place anyway.
Right.
Like every opportunity for the 49ers to pull their heads out of their asses this past season. And I don't know, just win 10. Just win 10. And they couldn't even do that. They were done before Thanksgiving. And I agree with everything that you're saying. I think it's extremely valid, but you need the football team. And right now, there is just a great deal of wishful thinking going into how this all goes down. And I understand that it is a nebulous, ambiguous concept right now because the roster is not full. But the roster is also totally bare bones. Like they just don't have bodies. They need more bodies, NFL caliber bodies. And the bodies that they're bringing in, save for like a DeMarcus Robinson and this Farrell tight end that they got, it's just totally unimpressive. And even like a DeMarcus Robinson, who I don't want to knock because I think he's a good enough player. I think he's an NFL player. Is he going to be your starting X receiver? Because I do think you need to move Juwan Jennings back into the slot more often because he doesn't handle press man to man. You need to have that off coverage and you need to have those matchup advantages for Juwan Jennings. It really showed late in the year when Brock was forcing in a lot of stupid passes because he's like, well, what's the difference between Juwan being open and Juwan being covered? Like, I got to do something here. I don't think you can start DeMarcus Robinson at X or even Z and expect the 49ers offense to look as good as it did last year. And it wasn't very good last year. So they are, again, masquerading being cheap as an idea for prudence. And I'm looking at a team that went 6-11 last year and that has no reason as it stands on their own merit to think that their roster is better. The defensive line went from really bad, and then they got rid of their 3 of their 4 best defensive linemen. Like, how does that
I was stunned by Malik Collins exiting. Like, I kind of got the Leonard Floyd, although I would have maybe brought him back too. I was really surprised by Malik Collins.
It was what it feels to me, and this is, I think, strictly my issue. You have to present the truth of the situation as to curtail or handle expectations externally. And maybe I'm out in front here because my expectations for this team were too high not that long ago, and I wasn't looped in on what they're currently doing. There is no evidence that they're doing anything other than taking an L in 25 to get somewhere in 26, which might be the smart thing to do. Can't disagree with that from a football logic standpoint. But you need to come out and say that. Because if you're getting rid of Malik Collins, you're not doing it because you think you can make your team better. You haven't brought in anybody to replace him. You're getting rid of him because he doesn't fit what Robert Saleh wants to do. If you're getting rid of Leonard Floyd, the expectation in the moment was, oh, they're getting Joey Bosa. Well, they didn't. So now do you keep Floyd? Too late. You already cut him. Like, all of these moves are being made for a more macro concept of what Robert Saleh wants to do, getting away from certain things. That's all well and good. But you cannot replace NFL caliber players, as mediocre as they might have been in Leonard Floyd and Malik Collins. You cannot replace them with rookies and expect to be as good this upcoming year because, yeah, they might be awesome rookies. They might also be Jacob Cowing, which I don't even know what he is. Like, most rookies don't. Right. You get 50%, you're the best GM in football. John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan were operating at like 10% for 5 years, and they finally had a 50% draft. And maybe they're high on their own supply. I don't know what it is. There's a lot of confounding factors here. This is a $9 billion company. It ain't exactly simple. All I know is if they think that they can get their roster better, having good players leave, not replacing them in free agency, but somehow replacing all of them in the NFL draft, they're delusional. And I cannot believe for a second that these guys who I've talked to, who I think are bright, capable, smart people are so delusional as to now suddenly think that that's possible. But in the days of algorithmic news, anything can go. The brain rot can kick in at any moment. Maybe it has in Santa Clara.
Well, I mean, do you think there might be then like a backdoor, unsaid, out loud agreement with everyone here in the front office as to the year that's about to have? And Jet, like Shanahan's ticking clock, which I know there's a certain element of content creation that is out there looking to push, that clock as fast to midnight as humanly possible. I think he is a good coach. I think good coaches can have bad seasons.
Totally.
I think he does many aspects of the job well, not all of them, not imperfect, little arrogant, little too, I can fix it, if you will.
Well, listen, and then Damon, we cannot be judging on such things. We got to let that one slide.
Right. Look, when I try to predict football strategy, I sound ridiculous. I thought maybe last year with Sorensen and Staley, they were going to have sometimes they're in a wide 9, sometimes they're in a 3-4, sometimes they're in a 4-3. They're going to be collapsible.
And to be fair, they practice that, and then they go, no, we can't do this. Thank God they brought Brandon Staley for all those incredible innovations he brought to the team.
Well, again, I know you have to have the right personnel to do something, but did they have the right personnel to do whatever they wanted to do? So you might as well try new shit out. Like I thought that was going to be last year's flavor defensively. I was totally wrong. I think this year's offensive flavor is George Kittle is the new Jimmy Graham. I think he's going to be split out an awful lot and off the line of scrimmage. So we'll see if I'm right or wrong about that. But yeah, you're right. Trying to talk X's and O's with these people, you quickly find out you don't even speak the language. Right. They are smart. They're great at what they do, and they're not stupid, which means do you think that there is a backdoor agreement that, we're going to take a step back and Kyle's seat is not going to really get that hot based on the vacuum of the season they're about to have?
Well, I just wrote this in a column at the Merc. They're going to have at least one press conference before the draft. That press conference needs to be not just John, but also Kyle and also Jed. And they need to explain where this team is, what they're trying to do, and set the expectations for 2025. Because the vast majority of fans aren't sickos like us and not, as educated as your audience. The vast majority of San Francisco 49ers fans, and I literally do not mean this as any slight, get their news off of ESPN app push notifications, right? They're not living and breathing it. There are certainly a great deal of people who do. Those people have opinions. We love hearing them. We love sharing ours. But most 49ers fans, they're not digging into it, right? They're reading the column every now and again. They'll check the box. Like, they're not living. During the season, they think about it. But it's off season. They're not living and dying by free. Oh, they cut Malik Collins. What number was he again? Like, that's not... right. Like, there is a level of casualness that should not be discounted. That's the majority of fans.
It's actually a very healthy place to exist if you're just a person in the world trying to have a nice life.
What a wild concept. I wish I could have gotten that memo way earlier in my life. Regardless, there is that is a large chunk. And those people have a voice, and it's fairly loud. And I think that voice, ironically, coming back to Mac Jones, got in on the whole NFL draft thing because we all had nothing to do but, sit around and watch YouTube and all 22 and think about quarterbacks because the Niners telegraphed what they were doing so early. And when it was presented that Kyle wanted Mac Jones, the casuals showed up and been like, hell no, I've watched 5 minutes of YouTube. I'd go with this Trey Lance guy. And that noise got in. What happens with ownership when okay, yeah, they might all have this agreement that we're going to take a step back. We believe in you. You can make the most of this situation, Kyle and John. We trust that even with these handcuffs that we've put on you, you'll be able to build a great roster. What happens when the fan base coming off a 6-win season sees a 4 or 5-win season, sees it get worse because one injury happens and this team is even less insulated than it was a year ago? And now they're playing rookies everywhere, even beyond what they were doing last year. And Curtis Robinson is starting at weak side linebacker next to Fred Warner, and it looks even worse than it did. They can't stop the run at an even higher level. What happens if the worst case scenario does indeed come to pass? Aren't those casual fans going to be like, I thought Kyle Shanahan was a good coach. He's won 10 games in 2 years. What the hell are we doing here? And at what point does that voice now become the consensus belief? I can't tell you that that's not coming down the pipeline. That people who are not under, can't kind of extrapolate this out and say, oh, it'll be fine in 26. I can't tell you. They're going to be like, hey, I thought we had a Super Bowl contention window. I thought last year was the backslide and that they're coming back even stronger this year. So these coaches, this head coach and this GM suck. Someone's got to go. And what's going to happen when Jed's hearing that down at his, generally, and I don't know what they do down in
the gazebo,
South Bay with big money.
Big double-decker gazebo in the backyard. That might have, let's just say, pushed the envelope on some zoning there in Atherton.
That's right. So what happens when all the NIMBYs get together and they start talking about, oh, how's it going? Hey, I saw that you guys aren't doing so hot this year, Jed. I'm wondering if I should up my season tickets again. What happens when your team is now not known as a kick-ass operation? What happens then? Because Jed has fired coaches for less. We know that. And I'm just looking at the entire circumstance and I'm saying Jed needs to get out in front of this. And he needs to take some ownership of this and say, listen, we are not in a position that no matter how much money we spent, we were going to be able to compete in 25. You can agree with that or disagree with that. That's our stance. So we didn't go out and spend a bunch of money that, one, we shouldn't be spending, and two, wouldn't have helped anyway. We're setting this up for 2026, and Kyle and John get through the 2026 season to show, hey, we're still the guys. But do not judge them on this upcoming year. We're going to take it on the chin for a year, and we'll be better off for it. If you get that out in front, then everybody at least understands the rules of engagement this upcoming season. And maybe they do what the Rams did in 23, win 10 games, make the playoffs, everything's hunky-dory. Life is expectations versus reality. And so far as I can tell, talking to the casuals in my life, the expectation for the majority of fans, and maybe I'm being imprudent by saying that's the majority, but the expectation is still sky high.
Yeah,
that they should be competing for the Super Bowl.
Yeah. I don't. Again,
they're not going to do it.
I think there's enough coaching and there's enough sort of every team in football ends up being a lot like every team in football. I mean, what separates the very best and the very worst is just this in the NFL, where it's this in other sports. So I feel like the Niners, like any team, will be able to cobble together something. A champion, a contender? No, that's not cobbled. That's well forged.
Damon, again, you're the Tampa Bay Buccaneers now, and right. Congrats. It's getting very Giantsy really fast. And I'm not talking New York. I'm talking San Francisco. Right. It's getting very somewhat break even.
Without the actual championships. I mean, that's the thing. What happened to the 49ers this offseason is the bill that comes to tables for teams that spend a lot of money on a Super Bowl champion. The Niners got all that comes with the Super Bowl trip except the Lombardi trophy. And 100%. The disease of more spread quickly. As it normally does on a winner, it spread that quickly on the runner-up here in San Francisco. Look, hey, you are supporting the channel right now just by watching it. You really want to support this broadcast, go ahead and hit that little thumbs up button right there. That is a completely free way to support the channel. Thank you so very much for doing so. We appreciate super chats, and when they come in, we like to read them. Tape doesn't lie. Jaheed Campbell, next defensive rookie of the year. See Rams, Jared Verse, stand pat at 11, gives Salah a ferocious new dog. I don't mind that, but I really think I've heard enough about defensive line depth to think the 49ers almost have to be looking offensive line first. And I know that there is plenty of conjecture that's not how they're thinking. They will look defensive line first. That is what they've done in the past. Past is prologue. Maybe. I'm just looking at draft depth. If Membu's there at 11 and they go D-line, goddamn everybody in the room.
He won't be.
He'll be 1 by 11. That's the thing. He probably is now. He ran himself to the top 10 at the draft. Rob says, don't be shocked if Kyle looks for an out after this season. Well, look, Dieter, you're around the team physically more than I am as, a writer for the Merc. It's your beat. You cover it. In terms of aging like a president, Kyle has done that. And I don't think I've seen him smile now in 3 seasons of football.
That's right.
This is a guy who looks like he is on the edge of burning out.
I don't think he would take an out to go away. I don't think he knows what to do with his time otherwise.
Right. He'd hate the beach in Tahiti real fast.
He can only spend so much time in Cabo. And this is a real issue for a lot of coaches. They don't have... There's no life-work balance. They can be good dads or all that, but they don't have a structure of how to operate in society. They've lived in a facility their entire lives. And in Kyle's case, almost literally. So
right.
I don't think that he would look for an out in terms of, oh, I'll go call games on TV or something. I mean, I think he would rather chop off his own foot than do that. But an out for some of the things that we were talking about, probably incorrectly late in the season, the Florio concepts of it all, like, hey, maybe someone will trade for Kyle. Now that they've already gone across that Rubicon and Kyle's had to answer it in a press conference and it's actually entered his ears and he's had to bounce it around in his head for 5 minutes, even to dismiss it. Given the current circumstances, I wouldn't blame him for being more open-minded to the concept if someone were to bark next year and say, hey, we'd love to trade for Kyle Shanahan. And listen, clearly the 49ers are all about compensatory picks. Imagine what you could get from Kyle Shanahan.
This has been great. Again, I love the perspective of somebody who is, around the team, realistic, not jaded, but realistic. I mean, that's where a lot of this comes from.
I appreciate that. Most people go jaded, and I don't blame them, but I appreciate it. We are of a similar ilk. We get it. We understand. There's only so much positivity that can be gleaned when you grow up in a place where you don't see the sun for 5 months out of the year.
Right. And you can't be the guy who's saying, every prospect that comes across a Niners mock draft is, ooh, this guy could really change things.
I love prospects. I can't get enough of them. It's my favorite thing. But even I'm like, okay, I'm going to be wrong on half of these guys. And even if I'm giving them a 90% hit rate, that's not a good percentage. I'd like to shoot that from 3, but not from the free throw line.
Thank God I wasn't on the air. Thank God I was still in college. But I remember the shit I used to talk around my fraternity's hallways about how much better Ryan Leaf was going to be than Peyton Manning. And the Colts really just fucked this up. So that was like a slice of humble pie that I'll never forget. Like, you can be wrong, Damon, about the things you think are about to happen in sports.
Listen, I do like to proceed this. Like, Kyle and John would have been fired under any other circumstance for the Trey Lance deal. And we all got to raise our hand. I'm sure there are some of you out there. God bless you. Get yourself a job with the Niners. They could use you right now. There are some people out there who, I was a Justin Fields guy, would have been wrong on that too. Sure. But when it was brought to you, Mac Jones or Trey Lance, I was like, Trey Lance all day, every day. No question in my mind. I was only half wrong because at least I didn't trade 3 first-round picks for him. I was wrong in taking Trey Lance 3rd overall. I didn't go all the way in on Trey Lance. So I'm just half wrong. But the point is, like, they had such conviction in that pick, or maybe not, that they should have been fired. No one recovers from that unless you get crazy lucky. And there is a very real chance that the 49ers have confused luck for quality. And that is a dangerous game to play because that's when the bottom falls out in a very serious way. When you get high on your own supply to the point where you think that, much like Kyle will think it with quarterbacks, that I can make this work no matter what. When you get lucky with Brock Purdy, and there's no other word to describe it, and you think, actually, we're geniuses because we also got George Kittle. Yeah, but, you also drafted Robert Beal. So for each up, there is a down, and there's actually been more downs than up, and we can counterbalance it however the hell you want. It's a crapshoot. You cannot build this roster on a crapshoot and then present it as 1, better, and 2, competitive. I just don't see how that's a reasonable take. And if that makes me a pessimist, so be it. But I'll be laughing in the end because I told you all on Leonard Floyd a year ago.
I want to wrap up with one more topic. This has been a fantastic hour together with Dieter. Were you also a fan of James Wiseman? Because I was. Oh, no, I was. I was like, oh, James Wiseman falling in your lap at 2. Holy shit. You run to the podium with that. James Wiseman is going to be the matchup nightmare that changes the Warriors and is the 7-2. I was wrong about that one, too.
That is actually, you walked right into a trap here, Damon. I was a big Tyrese Halliburton fan for the number 2 overall pick.
Okay.
And that would have aged like a fine wine.
It sure would have. And look at it this way. Had they drafted him, they probably don't trade him to Indiana. I'll at least give him that much, right? But
That's right.
Let's talk about a Warriors team that is like legitimately putting smiles on people's faces. Now, the pessimist could say every single team they've beaten has come with a flaw, a player unavailable. They're not exactly walking through the gauntlet right now. But, it's also vibes, as the kids say. It is also the naked eye test that they're passing in a few ways here, totally, regardless of opponent. Are you going to take anything more than a round 2 success story off of the expectations of the Golden State Warriors? Do you think we might be looking at an NBA Final Four team?
We very well could be. I don't want to cap their ceiling in any way, because they've already exceeded my high expectations for when they got Jimmy Butler. I didn't see 12-1 coming, and I certainly didn't see it being this seamless, even though I've been banging the drum for Butler for a year now. And I thought it would be great. I just didn't see it being this easy. And the basketball being this aesthetically pleasing and successful on both sides. I just thought that there would be a little bit of clunkiness and that they'd have to work it out a bit. And perhaps that now comes with Jonathan Kuminga coming back into a role that he's never had to play before, which is a role on a winning team. He's been getting by on whatever it is Jonathan Kuminga wants to do, because sometimes they need whatever it is Jonathan Kuminga wants to do. But the first rule of the NBA is talent gets you in and a role keeps you in. And guys like Guy Santos and Gary Payton II and Quentin Post, they couldn't hold Jonathan Kuminga's jockstrap when it comes to talent, but they understand what Moses Moody, they understand what they're supposed to be doing out on the floor. And when you have a clear hierarchy now of Steph 1, Jimmy 2, well, where's Jonathan Kuminga fit in with that? It could be gangbusters. It could be awesome, because now Jonathan Kuminga's a 3. And if you need me, I'm right here, baby. And, me and Jimmy, we're going to figure it out with the second. There's a lot of really positive things that can come about it. Also, Jonathan Kuminga has the kind of talent to torpedo all of this if he doesn't have his mind in the right spot. So I'm fascinated to see how that goes, because, again, Kuminga coming into the mix could take this team to an entirely different level, and I think the level they're at is good enough to talk about them, as you just said, as a top 4 team. So why cap it? Why cap it at 4? I do want to throw this out, though. As much as everyone is now feeling very comfortable, and I don't mean to straw man it by saying everybody, but there is a level of comfortability that I do feel has set in with the fan base and perhaps even with the entire league on the whole, that the Warriors are a top 6 team. They have nothing on Minnesota in the standings. Minnesota has kept pace over the last couple of weeks, and it is plausible, if not probable, given that Minnesota has the easiest schedule in the Western Conference moving forward, that the Timberwolves are the 6th seed, and the Warriors, despite perhaps doing everything right, would be the 7th seed, just because they're one game worse than Minnesota from here on out.
Right.
That, if they're in the play-in tournament, I know Jimmy's taken a team to the finals from the play-in tournament before, but doesn't that shape expectations a little bit? If they're the 6th seed, or hey, they're like 4.5 out of the 2 seed right now. If they're in any of those spots, you go, I'll take the chance. I'll take my chances with Draymond and Steph and Jimmy. I'll take them. Thunder would wipe them off the floor if the Thunder show up. I don't know if the Thunder are going to show up. They're 1 year older than Auburn. Like, they should be playing in the West Regional Final at Chase Center, not the NBA Western Conference Finals. So the idea that, Lakers, whatever. I know how that game plan works. They're going to ask LeBron to score 40 a night. He's not going to be able to do it over 7. I've been wrong on LeBron before, countless times, but I'm right about this one. With Jokic, I think Jokic is the best player on the planet. I think JJ Redick put in the game plan that really puts Denver in a tough spot, where you push Jokic off his spots by fronting him. You bring the double, and you dare someone else to beat you. It's the same thing they'll do with the Lakers. They'll double Luka. They'll dare somebody else. In this case, LeBron or Austin Reeves. It's
like how Don Nelson defended Dirk with the We Believe.
Right.
Yeah,
exactly right. Yeah. So I guess we're doing We Believe. What is this, 7.0 now? If the internet is right. So I can envision a world where all these other Western Conference matchups are good. It's very difficult for me to do that from a 7 spot. It's very difficult for me to think, okay, so they're going to win that one game, and then they'll come back, and I guess what that would be, they'd be playing the 2 seed, whoever the hell that is. Yeah, they can win that. It just feels like that's kind of like the 49ers have never won 3 straight playoff games. It kind of feels like the Warriors have like 2 playoff series wins in them, and if they're going to use one up in the play-in tournament, it's hard for me to imagine them getting all the way to the mountaintop. So this Kuminga thing, we might find out tonight, because it looks so easy with Jimmy. We might find out tonight, buy that futures ticket on the Warriors to win the championship, because it could look so awesome. We could also be like, this could be clunky for 17 games, and they're going to be going in like they did in 22, thinking this ain't our year, but we like our chances. And who the hell knows? Maybe they get lucky.
I'm glad that they have a little run up. I mean, the Warriors invented the term ramp up. I'm glad that they got a Kuminga ramp up here. They absolutely need it. Yep. Is Quentin Post the stretch five they've been looking for 6 years?
He's not it, but he's also a stretch five. So beggars can't be choosers. They didn't even have one. They were trying. It's like Bielitsa. You could only ask somebody. He's 7 feet tall and can shoot threes. Those are the prerequisites for filling the job. They have fulfilled the job to a replacement level, and it's great. It was even more necessary too. I mean, you just point like, oh well, Draymond. You have to have that next to Draymond so that you have a shooter to counterbalance Draymond, who himself seems to be a shooter now. But you definitely needed it with Jimmy, who outside of 13 feet, it is ugly. That bad boy is flatter than my singing notes. It is ugly to watch.
He knows it and plays accordingly, and that's why it works.
Well, hey, listen, high IQ basketball is always going to work for the Golden State Warriors, but this is a team that's reliant on Buddy Hield, which kind of is antithetical to the concept of high IQ basketball. Great guy. Nothing but positive things to say about Buddy Hield, the dude. Kind of nothing but negative things to say about him on the court, but, counterbalance, such is life. They're really reliant on his shooting. That's a dangerous game. They're reliant on Quentin Post, who can't jump. That's an interesting development for being in the NBA, but God bless him. He plays with intensity. He's given you more on defense than I think anyone could have expected. He's got a pretty stroke, but you're expecting Guy Santos to give you quality minutes. This is where Kuminga is so critical. And as it pertains to Post, no, he's not Miles Turner. He's not Kristaps Porzingis. Those would be the optimal versions, right? Because they can make the three, but they can also protect the rim. This team still doesn't have a rim protector. But damn it if he isn't trying, and effort's going to get you a long way in this league.
Hey, we got an awful lot of people in here, a lot of the usual suspects. A whole bunch of new folks have come on to check out our first conversation with Dieter, and I thank you all for being here. Hit like and subscribe. Normally, we end the show with Today in History, but today's just not a very interesting day in history, so we're not going to even waste your freaking time.
What are you talking about? We did this for the first time. This doesn't qualify?
History has been made. And I am not doing a show for you regulars tomorrow at our normal 11 o'clock start time because I'm going to chaperone a kindergarten class to either a trip to the Tunnel Tops Playground, which is a fantastic playground here in San Francisco, or it's going to be raining and we're going to be playing dodgeball inside of an auditorium and you're not going to need me to chaperone, but these teachers are smart. Once you get the agreed upon eyes to help, you don't let it go in case of rain. So I am committed to being kindergarten dad tomorrow, which I'm told is good for the soul. So I'll be doing that instead of being on YouTube. I think I've made the right choice. Dieter, you're a new dad. Am I playing this right?
No, you're not. This is a terrible mistake, Damon. 2 thoughts. Start drinking now. And second, if you want to live stream the kindergarten thing, I might be able to run some action on the side on it. Just a thought.
Absolutely. You're going to want to go ahead and start taking this kindergarten field trip money line. Thank you so much, Dieter. Let's do this again sometime soon. I enjoyed it. The chat certainly enjoyed it. I hope you did too, man.
Oh, absolutely. Pleasure to be on, and thanks for having me. Let's do it again.
Let's do it again soon. In the meantime, thanks everyone for tuning in to sort of an middle of the day broadcast. It was great having you here. My Hoosiers have absolutely crapped the bed in the Big Ten tournament. They don't even deserve to go to the NCAA tournament. You can't be a Big Ten team and a 10 seed. It's just a long.
You can in the SEC, baby.
Well, yeah, you're right about that. What do you get? 14 fucking teams are going to get in this tournament? Is that what it's going to be?
It's the best conference of basketball we've ever seen, and I'm very happy that Missouri is aggressively mediocre inside that conference.
Here is how different the world of sports has become. The SEC is a basketball conference, and Indiana is now a football school.
That's all I need to know.
I guess
you rest your case.
Sports don't build character, they reveal it, and like that...